Hey everybody, it's Mr. Streebel and Miss Szumigala here, and we're going to bring a lesson to you virtually today. We're going to get a little bit more into the short story and the literary elements that we've been talking about before. We're going to focus on mood and atmosphere of certain stories and a piece of literature for this lesson. Pretty soon you'll be seeing a PowerPoint be getting put up. And we'll move along through it, and you can follow along and listen to our comments that we have on it. And then it'll end with a activity that you're going to do on your own that'll eventually help you set up mood and atmosphere of your own piece of writing that you've been working on.
I'm working on getting everything set up here, Mr. Streebel. We're working on it.
All right. Some of the stuff we're going to look at, we're going to watch a short story animation clip. We're going to read a little bit of Ernest Hemingway. And then we got 3 short stories you can choose from as we've been doing in the past. So right now you should be seeing the slideshow up on your screen.
There we go. Yeah, as you said, we're going to keep on working on this creative expression unit that we've been working on since before this whole pandemic hit, and we're going to be working on mood and atmosphere. We're going to be working to write some narratives, and I think we all know that that's been our goal as we have been moving along. So we're going to write some narratives to develop real or imagined. In our case, it's going to be some imagined experiences that we're going to be working on, right? So, and it can have some basis in reality, but it is going to be an imagined experience. And we're going to be trying to do that in an effective way and using techniques and details and really thinking about what it is we're doing. Because in the end, we want to make clear and coherent writing. Now, that's ultimately the goal. And of course, in that process, it's always good to look at what the masters have done, what people who really do really well with this do. And so we're going to be, again, reading some stories like Mr. Streebel said. And so that should help us understand what people who do really well with this, what they've actually done. And as we've said before, we're going to be trying to provide some insight and understanding to somebody. And I think this is the really important thing for us to think about, is that we are trying to help readers connect and feel the situation. We want them to understand what it's like to be there. That's the goal, as opposed to just telling someone about it, which is what you do in an argument or what we've done in the past up to this point. But we're trying to get them to feel it. And this mood and atmosphere lesson that we're talking about today is going to be really important for creating that. Go ahead, Mr. Streebel.
Big part of creative writing is to actually invoke that emotion in the reader. It's not like you're reading informational or write an informational piece where you just want to get information across, but you actually want to steer the reader's emotions, whether you're doing a short story, one-act play, or poetry. Big part of creative writing is invoking certain emotions out of your reader, and we're going to go through ways to do that with the language today.
Yep. And of course, in the end, you are going to have that requirement that we've been talking about, which is 5-page piece that is going to be double-spaced. And you have already had that idea, that theme that we created way back before we even knew that we weren't going to be here and that we weren't going to be meeting together. And then we're going to be trying to really craft that. And that's where we're at, because hopefully at this point, you've already got the basic outline of your story already created. So now you can say, well, what are those really important points that I really need people to understand, and where do I want to put their focus? And that's what all of the lessons from here until we have this thing all done are going to sort of be centered around. And there's lots of different ways to tell a story. You can tell a story with poetry, you can tell it in a short story or a one-act play. And being that we talked about spoken word poetry earlier, that's one of the options. So, whichever one you want, I don't care. In fact, I know we already have one-act play out there that's being written, and I'm sort of excited to read it. So I guess we'll see what everybody comes up with. So mood is the literary element that we're going to be really working on right now. And in literature, mood is a literary element that evokes certain feelings or vibes in the reader through words and descriptions. Usually, mood is referred to as the atmosphere of a literary piece. It creates an emotional setting. That's an interesting thing, an emotional setting that surrounds the readers. Mood is developed in a literary piece through various methods, including setting, theme, tone, and diction. And we're going to see how writers use all those elements to create that mood. And I highlighted here tone and diction because I really want you to realize that's what we're going to be working on, is finding the right words and finding the right way to sort of say that. Because I love that idea of an emotional setting. You know, that we need, just like we need to have something happening in the right time and place, we need that right mood. We need that right feeling to be going on at the same time. So if any of this seems still kind of confusing to you, right down here is this literarydevices.net. And I love this particular place. So anything that you're kind of looking up and you're wondering, you know, what is a good one, this is a really good place to find more examples. So moving right along, we have this great little clip. It's a short film. I believe it won all sorts of things, but this is called Frances, and I think we can tell already kind of the mood of what this story is. You know, this is sort of the trailer for it just by that video, the thumbnail that was up for it. And I don't know, like, Mr. Streebel, as you look at this, what do you think? What type of story do you think it might be?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. You look at the concerned expression, as well as the lighting kind of creating shadows on the face and everything. It definitely seems like, very foreboding type of film. Like, I feel like it's going to be maybe something worrying or scary that's going to be involved. And also even the color choice. If you look, it's all cool colors, blues, blacks. So again, it's trying to create a very like dark and like maybe like unsettling mood, it seems like to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So let's see. Let's see if we can get this thing to play for us. Maybe. Here we go.
Is it on yours?
Well, Grammarly is always a good thing, right?
Yeah. Just so you know, I'm not seeing it on my screen right now.
Okay. So guys, I'm thinking we're going to have some problems with actually showing you this. I love the idea of showing it to you, but we do have the video is up. I don't know if we can, what's this new share? I don't know if it's going to let me. Can you see anything yet?
Yep, it's up now. I see it.
It is up? Okay. Okay, so we're going to try and watch this, and hopefully everybody gets to see it.
Hope the sound is working on your end. Yeah, I'm not getting sound here.
You're not getting any sound?
Not from the video. It's kind of slowing the frame rate down a tad watching it that way.
I wonder if we can get. We may have to just tell people to watch this on their own.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'm sorry, guys, but I don't think this is going to work properly. We might get it to work Can you see the screen with creative expression again?
Yep. You may just have to watch it. You might not be able to hear a live commentary on it. But.
Yeah, we won't be able to talk about that live, but I really want you to go watch that because that brings us to our next.
It's good. It's very entertaining. I like this little short film a lot.
I liked it too, a lot. So it's good even just to sit down and be like, oh, what's something to do today? But let's talk about. I'm going to assume now that you paused this video and that you went and you watched it.
If not, pause now.
Yes. Pause now. If you haven't, pause. Go watch the video. Come back to us because we would love to talk to you some more. So now that we're assuming that they have done this, what are some of the good words that we defined the mood or the atmosphere of this video, and what makes you feel that way? And then of course we're going to deal with the big question at the end, and that's why did the author do it? So
well, as far as a couple words I noticed right in the very beginning, what stuck out to me, especially after rewatching it a second time, is that about 41 seconds in, when they're talking about the campground that they're going up to, the line goes, you can go days and days without seeing another soul. Now, there's many ways you can describe a campground as being remote, and I think that's maybe the most foreshadowing way to do it, is saying you're not going to see another soul out there, and obviously we end up dealing with maybe somewhat of a monster tale, a disappearing girl, and so I think that connects quite nicely. And then also, as far as just more singular words that kind of helped with the mood, was that a couple of different ways they described the lake. One way they described the lake as lonely, and another way was quiet. Both things that kind of add to the creepy atmosphere of the situation. And they put those words and those emotions in your head, so you're thinking lonely, quiet. Those aren't good things when there's something scary around. So it kind of maybe adds to that nervousness, the anxiety that the reader might be feeling going along with this story. And then also I really liked how they said that she was paddling furiously by the end of it, because, by the end, you could tell her emotion and the story should be matching the reader's. It's getting amped up. And by the end, she's freaking out. And so furiously, she's just paddling at the water, and it's not doing her any good. And then a couple of cool things I noticed, and, these aren't just words, these are obviously things you can get through a movie, but two separate times there were music and lighting shifts in the short film here. One about a minute in, when the story first started, and thinking all right, things are picking up now. The music shifted to a little bit more ominous of a tone, and the lighting overall went from the warm lighting that was in that child's room, all of a sudden going to that darker lighting with all the blues and the blacks and the purples. And then later, about maybe 3 minutes into the actual story, there's a second shift. Once the situation goes from being kind of like creepy and alone, all of a sudden goes into, oh no, I'm really in trouble. The music shifts again to amps up even more. It's louder. It's got a higher tempo. Again, matching that amping up of the emotion that both the character is feeling and that the reader should be feeling along with that character.
I love the fact that you brought up, I love some of those words, some of those big words like creepy and anxious, but I also really love the way that you talked about the shifts, because that happens in any good story. There's shifts, everything isn't creepy the whole time. If we think back to Macbeth, we had where all of those guys got killed and we know the king had just gotten killed, and then we had to go to our goofy little guy at the door, right? Who's all drunk and talking about that, because we needed to have that shift away from things in order to make it more effective. And I think it's something for you to think about in your own story as you're writing, is where are those shifts, and what is your mood isn't going to necessarily be the exact same mood throughout the entire story, and we see here, we start where he's at home and kind of talking about this and just showing us the map. And then we see where she's clearly like just relaxing out on the lake there, right? And she shouldn't be, but she smokes the cigarette there for a moment. And it's just this ultimate, like, I just got away from my parents, I'm chilling. And yet we had had enough ominous stuff before that we knew this wasn't going to stay that way. And then all of a sudden there's the thumping, and she gets scared and terrified. And those are clear shifts that we see. So it's something I really want you to think about in your own stories, is what are those shifts, and where do you shift, and how are you going to change the words that you're using and the proverbial lighting, right, of your story when you hit those shifts. And I think that that's something that's really important for all of us to be thinking about as writers and as authors and as readers. So that moves us on to the next one that we have. And in this piece, this is a Ernest Hemingway microfiction is what they call it. And this is the whole story. So I just want to tell everyone that this is the whole story. And so we have to kind of look at this piece, recognizing that this is all he gives us. And he did put this into his story collection called In Our Time. So, Mr. Streebel, do you want to read that for us?
Sure. All right.
Oh, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. As you go along, I might kind of highlight some of the words, because I can see over here, what are some of the words we can find in that text that shows the mood. So if it's something that I'm noticing, I might highlight as you go.
Sure. All right. This story from Ernest Hemingway's collection, In Our Time. They shot the 6 cabinet ministers at 6:30 in the morning against the wall of a hospital. There were pools of water in the courtyard. There were wet, dead leaves on the paving of the courtyard. It rained hard. All of the shutters of the hospital were nailed shut. One of the ministers was sick with typhoid. 2 soldiers carried him downstairs and out into the rain. They tried to hold him up against the wall, but he sat down in a puddle of water. The other 5 stood very quietly against the wall. Finally, the officer told the soldiers it was no good trying to make him stand up. When they fired the first volley, he was sitting down in the water with his head on his knees.
Wow, that is such a crazy little story. And, it makes me kind of think. I know something about Ernest Hemingway. In fact, when I went on my trip to Mexico, I went to, this past year, I went to go to Ernest Hemingway's house, which actually wasn't in Mexico. It was actually in Key West. And he spent a good deal of time there. And one of the things that he wrote about quite often was war, because he had been in World War II. And he had been taken as he had been in World War I, sorry, not World War II. He had been in World War I. And he had some pretty crazy moments that happened while he was over there. And he was shot, and he kind of left working with the Italian army, actually, because he was just really upset with some things that were happening over there. But it made me, I know something about him, and I know a little bit about who he is. So I just kind of wanted to share that with you, because this is very likely something he might have experienced, because something kind of like this shows up in several of his pieces. But I think, man, this thing makes me feel so like, it makes me feel upset and hopeless and like there's just so much death going on in this. And I feel really like, I guess, with a lot of mixed emotions here, because I can't help but ask a lot of questions about who are these cabinet ministers and why did they want to shoot these guys so badly when they were in a hospital. And so all of these questions come up. And so I have to look back and say, what made me feel that way? What made that emotional setting happen? And as I'm looking through this, I realize there are definitely some things going on. And this first word, like this is what a way to start it, right? They shot the first 6 cabinet ministers, or they shot the 6 cabinet ministers at 6:30 in the morning. And to me, what a way to start, right? They shot. We're right. This is a thing they call in media res, but it's where you come in and you're in the midst of, you're in the middle of the action. But this word shot, it's so final, and what a way to start it. And of course, the rest of the story follows that by explaining that shooting. So that word shot really sticks out. And I felt really anxious, I think, because against the wall of a hospital, to me, that's really an interesting place, because we usually associate people going to the hospital in order to get respite, in order to get cared for, in order to feel better. And instead of this being a place where they can be getting better, they're getting these guys and pulling them out of the hospital and shooting them against the wall there. And that gets continued with this idea of death. And I see it in this wet, dead leaves. And this is just and it rained hard. This is a really short sentence. And whenever you have these really short sentences, you really focus on them. But it rained hard, again, gives you this sort of pathetic setting. We said that we can create it through setting, and having all these wet, dead leaves around and it raining really hard. Those all really, I think, kind of highlight that. All the shutters on the hospital were nailed shut. And we can't help but notice the repetition here, right? Shutters and shut. And they're both these really abrupt sounding words. And then when you add into it that they were nailed shut. And the only thing I can think of being nailed shut that people usually talk about with that is a coffin. And I realize here they're talking about the shutters on the windows because we're in the midst of war. But it being nailed shut was just such a, I think that has definitely that feeling of, again. And he was sick. One of the ministers was sick with typhoid. And again, we have to think about, these guys are pulling someone out of that hospital. And if he was sick with typhoid, it was very likely he wasn't going to live anyhow. So what is it that it makes me question in my mind? You've got this guy who's so sick that they even had to carry him. And this puts that visual, which of course makes me feel like, okay, you are literally taking a guy who's on his deathbed and you're pulling him out to shoot him. And it makes me question either what has he done or what type of people are these that are doing the shooting. So we get this sick with typhoid. They carried him downstairs and out into the rain. And again, is that rain being repeated over and over again. And even when the fact that they tried to hold him up against the wall. I mean, I want you to just take a second and think about what that means. That means we're literally physically holding the guy against the wall so we can shoot him. That's how sick he is. And then there's the other 5 cabinet ministers that we come to now who just stand there and wait for it. I don't know, somebody brings me down to get shot, I'm probably going to try to fight against it. So I can't help but wonder, why are they just very quietly, and there's the words, very quietly standing there waiting to be killed? And it gives a sense of, it was no good trying. It was no good trying. So like they felt like either they deserved this, or did they feel as though they just weren't going to get away from it regardless? And fired first. Again, we have that that abrupt sound, the F's that are in there, and fired and first, that alliteration that's going on there. And it really kind of highlights those ideas, and it makes you almost hear it. But it also sets that mood of, here we go. And of course, we can't get out of our head the visual of this guy who's sitting down in the water with his head on his knees. And that's how he is when he's shot. So if I were going to go back and find those words, we see the word shot. We see the phrase here, against the wall of a hospital, wet dead leaves, rained hard, nailed shut, sick with typhoid, carried him, more rain, hold him up against a wall, sat down in a puddle of water, very quietly against the wall, no good trying, fired the first, and head on his knees. I think we can see here sort of this mood, and I don't know. I don't even know what words I would use, but I definitely get the feeling like we have one set of people who are, I don't know, like have kind of given up. I don't know. It's a lot of really tough visuals here, but the mood has certainly got, sort of these ideas juxtaposed of these guys who are trying to clearly kill someone, versus these guys who just aren't even willing to fight for it. So, but this activity, what I just did, with going through and saying, what are the words that sort of, and phrases that stick out to me? And there's no reason that these have to be the words. There's plenty of other words that are in here, that you could pull out. Those were just the ones that I thought really stuck out to me. But this is what you're going to be doing, the same thing in your playlist. And the playlist here that we're going to be working with, you have the lottery, and the lottery is, this is another one of those sort of mind-bending, really make you think about things in life, and it's one of those type of stories. I think it's excellent. It's definitely been shown as being one of the classics of all time. All in a Summer Day is an interesting one. That's this picture down, the picture down on the right, down here. And it's, there's a kid, and the kid is sort of stuck not knowing how to communicate well with other kids, because those other kids are actually from a different planet. And then I think the next one, it was from The Onion, I believe, originally, and it's also Uncommon Lit, but wealthy teen nearly experiences consequences. I'm pretty sure you can get a pretty good idea, because we see things like the word nearly in there to have some idea of what that might possibly be. So those are some of the things that you can kind of choose between. And so this is the activity. Go ahead. Did you want to go through that?
Yeah, sure. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using the story that you read to figure out the mood, or to figure out mood creating words. You are going to create a list of the words you used to create that mood. And if do you want to come up the wheel yet?
We can show it to them in a minute. But yeah, and you'll notice if you look on there that you're going to be looking for about 10 words that are in your story somewhere, because that's what the actual assignment has on it, is a list. So if you can find 10 words somewhere in your story, that's what you're looking for. And that's when you're going to apply this. And the application that I want you to do is to, remember how we talked about those shifts earlier? I want you to look for where those different shifts are in your writing for your story. Where you feel like you've moved on to the next sort of episode in what's going on in your story. And I want you to go ahead.
When I was going to say, and relating that to the activity that you're doing, so when you pull those words out and you're going to make your list, you're going to kind of pay attention of how those words change throughout the story, just different emotions as you move through. That's the type of thing you want to pay attention to, is kind of how they're spaced out through that story and how they match up with the plot points of what you're writing.
And then of course, the ultimate goal is for you to write your own. And so I want you to think about that. And I didn't give you a particular number on the worksheet because, everybody's story is a little bit different. And so I don't really have a particular number, but I think you're going to have at least 10 somewhere in the story of words that you want to use. But, it's going to be different moods. So if you realize, well, here's one of my things and here's another moment. And if you actually look at your plot chart, probably those different items that you had put on your plot chart are each going to sort of be where those shifts exist. But think about, what mood do you want to feel in that particular moment? And when you look at that mood, what words are you going to have? And obviously you're not going to have this whole thing of the groups, because we kind of got rid of that because putting together groups is a little difficult. Mm-hmm. But we have this, if you're kind of at a loss for words, which all of us do that sometimes, we have this thing that I found, and actually it was, I think it was actually designed for people to better be able to explain how they felt. But I think it works really well for characters and moods also. And so instead of just saying that in this particular moment, I want them to feel angry, well, maybe, but what do you mean by angry? Do you mean let down, humiliated, bitter, mad, aggressive, frustrated, distant, critical? What do you mean of that? And then you can see there's a couple of different options inside of any of those. So as you're thinking about it, like I would say, if we were talking back to the video that we watched, I would say they were trying to come up with a fearful mood in that. Well, how was she feeling fearful, and it sort of changed throughout the story. Sometimes she was feeling scared and sometimes she was feeling anxious. At one point she feels weak when she can't, but then if I want an even better word, I'm going to say, well, weak, did she feel worthless? I wouldn't say that was it. But maybe she did feel insignificant, like she didn't have the actual physical strength to be able to do something. So those are some of the things of the words that you can find to help to put in there, because the next step that you're going to do is, if you've already written your rough draft, then you'll be able to just go into your rough draft and find, well, where do I want to put those words? Where do I want to make sure that I have that feeling inserted? And maybe I want to have something better than angry as my word. And maybe instead I want to have aggressive or provoked, right? Those are better words than just angry. So you're going to take those words and then make sure they go in there. If you're just at the outlining stage, which is fine also, you can kind of put on the outline that these are some of the words when I write my rough draft that I'm going to want to make sure I include. So does that make sense to everybody, I hope? But that's basically what we're hoping for you to do. As always, keep on using that Remind app. You can talk to me anytime, ask me questions. All of this exists in Schoology. We're going to obviously be sending these home to everyone that we can. But hopefully this all, makes sense to you. But if you have any questions, we can set up a Zoom with someone to do like a one-on-one Zoom if you need help with that, or, keep on asking me questions through Remind.
And if you need to get a hold of me, obviously the Remind, I get those as well. Send me a direct email. I check that multiple times a day. And then also, if you call my phone number at the school, that call is now going to be forwarded to me directly. So if you call the general school number, And then my extension, dial my extension, I'll send this out, is 4447. So if you call the school number, wait for the automated prompts, and then dial 4447, I'll be able to go to my phone. And so I'll be able to either, you can leave a voicemail if I miss it, and I'll get back to you, or, we just go over any questions you have in any of these activities that you're trying to put together.
All right. So I'm really missing seeing all of your faces. This is certainly not the ideal situation, but it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot better than if we didn't have it. So we will be sending one more of these out every week. So I've had a fantastic time seeing you, and hopefully we'll see your faces for real sometime soon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.